Good morning, everyone. Boker Tov. You know, with all the anti-Semitism, people often ask the famous question, what's the cause of anti-Semitism? And there's all different types of answers. And one famous answer you hear is that it's jealousy. They're envious. They're jealous of the Jewish people. But the question really is, what comes first? Does jealousy lead to hatred? Or is it the other way around? Does hatred lead to jealousy? So interesting, in this week's parsha, we begin with the story of Yosef and the brothers. And we find that Yosef was the favorite son. His father made him a coat of many colors. And then on top of that, Yosef brings tattletales on his brothers to their father. And then on top of that, his father makes him a coat of many colors to distinguish him as the beloved child. And it leads to both envy, jealousy, and hatred. But if you pay attention in the opening section, it says that after he had his first dreams with the sheaves of grain bowing down, it says, Vayisnu oto, they hated him. And they couldn't speak to him peacefully. Then after the second dream, the Torah introduces that not only did they hate him, but Vayikanu bo'achav, they were jealous of him. So the Torah seems to be saying that first comes hatred, and then the hatred leads to jealousy, not the other way around, that because you're jealous, you hate someone. On the contrary, you first hate someone and then you're jealous of them. Why? Because the truth is, the Talmud says, a person is never jealous of their child. Let's say you have a child who's more successful than you, who's greater than you. Are you envious of your child? Of course not. You're happy for him. You're proud of him. Why you're never envious of your child? Because you love your child. So how could you be jealous of someone you love? You could only be jealous of someone that you don't love. So first has to be the hatred. Once you hate them, you could be jealous of them. When you love someone, you're happy for their success. Your spouse, your child, your parent, your brother, your sister, you should be happy for them. In Yiddish is the word farginen. So there's 3 steps. The first step is hatred. That leads to jealousy. And then the hatred and the jealousy leads to violence. That's why the 10th commandment is don't be envious of a person. Why? Because once you're envious of them, ultimately you will try to harm them because you're envious of them. As we see with Yosef and the brothers, that the brothers tried to kill him because they first had hatred and then jealousy of him, which led to violence. That's why the Rambam says, why is it a sin to be envious of another person? The 10th commandment, don't covet your neighbor, because eventually something negative will occur. Maybe you'll speak bad about the person, you'll try to undermine them, you'll try to hurt them directly, indirectly, or God forbid, even worse. So therefore, you have to be very weary of hatred, because it leads to jealousy, and hatred and jealousy leads to violence. And therefore, we have to uproot it from ourselves immediately and never allow it to grow and to fester. The story told about this Jew from Europe. He was walking from one shtetl to the next. He had never seen train tracks. All of a sudden, he sees train tracks. He says, oh, this is an easy place to walk on the train tracks. He starts walking on the tracks. As he's walking the tracks, he hears a little whistling sound from a distance. Okay, a whistle, no problem. He walks a little further, the whistling is getting louder, louder. Suddenly he turns around, he hears a shrieking whistle, and there's this huge train coming down the tracks. He jumps off the tracks just in time. He falls into a ditch. Thank God his life was saved. But he's bruised and knocked over and bleeding. Another Jew comes along and says, come, I'll take you to my house. He cleans him up. He sits him down in the kitchen. He says, let me make you a glass of tea. He puts the chainik up on the fire. After a few seconds, it starts whistling. The guy takes a stick. He starts hitting the chainik. He starts beating the kettle. He says, well, you meshuggah, what are you doing? He says, you got to kill these things before they turn into big monsters, you know? So sometimes when we see a little bit of trace of hatred or a dislike for another person or envy, we have to stop it in its tracks, so to speak, uproot it immediately before it turns into a big monster, before it gets out of control, out of check, and God forbid to lead to something really terrible with even tragic outcomes, like the story of Yosef and the brothers. Let's go to